Okay, it's 5:15. According to Rogers Wireless, it's 5:15. So could people take seats, please? So, for those of you who didn't read the agenda and are just here because it seemed like this is where everybody is, this is the community meeting. This is the point where the community, the NANOG community, gets to interact with the people you elected and the people that those elected people selected to voice your concerns or endow great praise. All these things are possible. So I'm going to talk for a little bit here. My name is Joe Abley. I work for Afilias during the day. I work for NANOG during nights, usually, instead of sleeping. So what we're going to talk about for the next little while, the steering committee. We have a report on the steering committee, which I'm going to talk over. Steve is going to give an update about the program and about the program committee in general. Rob Seastrom is going to talk about the mailing list and administrative issues related to that. Betty is going to give an update from Merit. And at the very end, if we have questions and we have other topics that we want to bring up and talk about, then we should do that. So one important point is that don't treat this like some sort of lecture. This is a interrupt at will. I've actually had please interrupt at will, and then Philip said, who's will? So I took that off. Marty Hannigan is not here this meeting, so we need extra effort for interruption. So the steering committee part. After St. Louis, we have a new steering committee. It resembles in many ways the old steering committee, but it is subtly different. As I mentioned, I'm Joe Abley. This is me. Betty Burke. Betty, do you want to stand up? Just in case anybody who's just come into the room didn't see you in the newcomers. Betty is the merit-appointed person on the SC. Randy is here somewhere, I think. Is Randy still? There he is. Over in the corner, Randy Bush. Steve Feldman, down here at the front. Chris Morrow, I don't think is here yet. Has anybody seen Chris today? Chris, I don't think is here. Bill Norton. Is Bill still here? Over there at the back, Bill Norton. Philip Smith, here in the second row. And Joe Provo, the newly elected member of the steering committee. That's right, big hand for Joe Provo. And we said goodbye to Jared at the end of the last election. Jared decided not to stand again. He had family commitments, and he put a lot of time into the SC during the last SC season, and we thank him. I don't think Jared's here yet either. I think he's coming though. Say again? There we go. Not here yet. So as well as the election of the new SC at the St. Louis meeting, we also had some changes to the charter that were voted on. And I'm not going to go through these in any great detail. It's too late for that. They've already been accepted. So if you're interested in exactly what they say, you can go and read the charter, the new charter, which incorporates the new text. There was one sort of direct impact in terms of the people involved in these various committees, though, which is 2006-03, the SC-PC overlap prohibition. There was nothing in the charter beforehand that said you couldn't be on both committees. And in fact, there were 3 of us, I think, to start with, that were on both committees. Bill Norton and I decided not to stand for the PC. Is that how it worked? I forget. Well, we removed ourselves from the nomination process for the PC anyway. And that left Chris. And Chris found himself on both the PC and the SC. And he decided to resign from the PC so that he could stay on the SC. So the balance of nature was restored, and everybody smiled happily. Except Steve, right? We also have a new mailing list committee. So for those not that familiar with the process, the community elects the steering committee, and the steering committee then appoints, based on an open call for volunteers, the people who make up the program committee and the mailing list admin team. And we do that in close collaboration with the existing members of those teams to make sure we don't throw anybody at them that are going to cause personal issues. And luckily we haven't had any of those. We have a new mailing list committee: David Barrick, Sue Joyner, Alexander Pilasov, Rob Seastrom, and Brett Watson. And we said many, many thanks to Chris Maleta and Steve Wilcox, who had been on the previous committee, and we rolled them off to preserve their sanity for the next little while. Previously, the mailing list was kind of an oddity. It wasn't really sort of considered in the same way that the program committee was as far as the charter was concerned. And while the steering committee has the chair of the program committee sitting ex officio to participate in the various discussions that the steering committee has, the mailing list didn't. And a few of us felt that that caused some communication problems between the mailing list admin team and the steering committee. So we fixed that, we think, by inviting Rob Seastrom to our bi-weekly conference calls, and also adding him to all our mailing lists, so he has direct access to all our conversations that go on. When the SC meets, apart from at meetings like this one, it's almost always by email and phone. So if it wasn't for the fact that we had that sort of overlap, it's more challenging to try and get people to talk to each other. Now, I couldn't quite remember. Randy thinks this was announced at the end of the last NANOG meeting, but I'm not sure. But if anybody missed it, an anonymous donor provided a pool of cash to help sponsor the attendance at the joint ARIN NANOG meeting by someone who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford to attend. The details are on the webpage if you go and have a look at it. So the decision as to who gets the award is made jointly by NANOG and ARIN. And on the NANOG side, we decided to appoint Randy Bush as the point man for accepting all the applications and things like that, and really sort of summarizing the process as for the rest of the SC. So the SC still makes the decision, and then NANOG and ARIN together make the final decision for who gets to come to the joint meeting and be paid for. We increased the meeting fees by $100. This is the point where everyone's really supposed to get angry and shout and things. Everyone's very, very quiet. So apart from that, we thought we heard in previous community meetings like this one that the important things for people who travel to NANOG were making sure that the price per night at the hotel was under control, because people have corporate travel policies. They can only expense so much. Making sure that the location was sensible. It wasn't too hard to get to. You didn't have to hop through 9 airports to reach it. And one thing we heard was that the meeting fee was very, very low compared to comparable events elsewhere. And if we were to increase the meeting fee, wouldn't that help with this shortfall in funds in the NANOG budget that we've been talking about for the last few meetings? So we went ahead and implemented this as a short-term measure to restore some of the buoyancy to the NANOG accounts at Merit, whilst obviously still pursuing other ways to increase sponsorship revenue and other ways to make the books balance. So does anybody feel like saying anything? Does anybody sort of, I guess you're here, so you obviously paid the extra money. Does anybody hear of anybody else who specifically didn't come because the meeting fee was higher? Does anybody have any opinions about this at all? Maybe we should just double it. What do you think? Well, it doesn't seem like it's very contentious today. There was a bit of traffic on the mailing lists, and one of the questions that people asked was, what are we getting for our money? What do we get for our extra $100? And one of the things we've worked very hard to do is to try and push out the schedule of NANOG meetings so that, for example, we're aiming so that you will know exactly where every NANOG meeting will be 18 months out at any time. That's our goal. We're not quite there yet. I think Betty's going to talk, if not today, then probably at some other point during the meeting, about the venues for the next 2 meetings. So we're getting close. That's another almost 2/3 of a year's worth of meetings. But if anybody has strong opinions about other things they think we should be doing better, I know a lot of people are new here, so it's a hard question to answer. Okay, we'll just move on then. There was a reorg at Merit not so long ago. Various people who will be familiar to NANOG attendees were shifted around within Merit to have slightly different roles. Departments were realigned. Everyone is familiar with this corporate process, I'm sure. And after that happened, Don and I had a conversation to try and just confirm Merit's role with NANOG and to make sure that the Merit board was fully committed to hosting NANOG into the future. And I'm very pleased to say that indeed was the confirmation I got. Merit's very excited about continuing to host NANOG. They're planning to send more people to NANOG. And in fact, they're drawing on the experience that they've gained through hosting NANOG meetings and logistics and hotel conferences and things, and they're trying to take that expertise and use it for other programs as well. So this all bodes well for NANOG. This all sounds like a sort of a long future commitment to the meeting hosting and the administrative support for NANOG. So it was nice to have that confirmation.
Is Don here?
Is Don here? He's flying in tomorrow, I think, isn't he? Coming in tomorrow. So that's over to Steve. So is there anything else? Anybody else would like to say about anything? Oh. Oh, one thing I should mention as well. We have more students at this meeting than we've ever had, I think, at a NANOG meeting before. I think Sheridan College, I think we have 19 people here, about 7 people are here. Yay, Sheridan College. I think we also have more newcomers at this meeting than we've had from many, many meetings, which is also very good. So that was actually all I had to say. I have to fill more time now.
These are not computer science students. They're sociologists come to see TV.
Oh, yes. They came to the right place then. Okay, thanks very much.
So while I'm making this work, if there's any program committee members out there, could you stand up and wave so we can thank you or throw things at you or whatever? Thanks. Thanks, all of you. Okay, let's see. Let me make this work here. There we go. Okay. Oh, it worked. Okay. I changed the title page a little bit in honor of Joe and our Canadian hosts here. So, but I didn't actually go all the way through. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about what the program committee has been up to for the last few months. Going to apologize right now because I don't have all the details and numbers that I normally have because I ran out of time. But I'm going to make up for it later, and I'll explain that in a minute. Also, the disclaimers, the opinions that I'm going to mention are my own, the mistakes are mine, but the program is put together by a lot of hard work from a lot of volunteers in the program committee and, of course, everybody who submitted a proposal. So thanks again to you. First thing we did since the last meeting is got some new members, and some former members have retired. As Joe mentioned, the steering committee selects the composition of the program committee with one exception, and that's the merit-appointed member. So we have 5 new members, Igor, Kobe, Mike, Keith, and Richard, replacing the 5 members who have retired since then. Joe and Chris, of course, have moved on to be full-time on the steering committee. Kevin, Hank, and Dave also have gone into other things, but they've all put in a lot of work, and we, of course, thank them. This program, this is where I kind of fell down. We had 43 submissions this time, and that does not include a small handful that I got after the formal call had expired, and people sent email and asked, can I be in the program? And in a few cases I was able to say yes, but in most of them I had to say no, sorry, we're full. So the real number is probably closer to 45, 46. But the important thing to notice is that that number is substantially higher than for the previous meeting where we only had 32 submissions. So again, thank you everybody who submitted. Keep up the good work. The other thing that's different this time is that we're going to have an actual keynote speaker Tuesday morning, somebody we've invited to come in and talk. And this is kind of an experiment. We've never done a keynote like this before. We'd like to find out if it's popular, and if so, we'll keep trying to find new, interesting, entertaining people to come and talk to us. So that's something. I don't know if there's a survey question about it or not, but if there isn't, please write it in or just tell us in the hallways whether you think this keynote thing is a good idea. Because if so, we'd like to keep it up. Oh, and of course, my promise from before is I'm going to put together a report with actual numbers of how many were submitted and how many were accepted in various categories and things. One of the things that people have said to us in the past is that the program committee kind of works behind closed doors and doesn't tell us much about what's going on and what we've done. So the report's going to be an attempt to alleviate that, help people be less concerned that we're just inviting our friends to speak or whatever. Program format, we're back to the Sunday through Wednesday format, which has been quite successful since we instituted it about a year ago, more than a year ago now. And in fact, people missed it at the last meeting, the joint meeting with Aaron, because Aaron takes up Wednesday through Friday of those weeks. So I don't know, I said here what the schedule is. I mentioned it before. Nothing unusual about that. We're going to talk with Aaron a bit and see if we can find a way of better integrating the two meetings. Have some ideas on the table about that so that we don't have to feel as rushed and that there can be more joint interaction between the two sets of attendees who really are one group. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of crossover between the two. And then my last page about feedback. We want you to talk to us and tell us what you think about the program, about the way we operate, what we could do better, how maybe even if we've done a good job, we'd like to hear that too. PC members most of them have yellow badges. I have a green badge because I get to sit in on the boring steering committee meetings as well. But it's only an hour out of my life every 2 weeks. And lots of meetings, meetings here. Send mail to us and to each other. NANOG Futures is for public discussion of stuff like this. NANOG PC at nanog.org gets to all the PC members, so it's one way to talk to all of us. And of course, we invite you to volunteer. Every October, the PC is going to be selecting 8 members the SC is going to be selecting 8 new members for the PC, or returning. So when the call comes out for nominations in October, if you want to, if you're interested, volunteer. And now I'll just open the mics if anybody has anything they want to say. One request from the back is that you do use the microphones because this event is being recorded and I think broadcast. So, and I see Bill standing at a microphone.
Hey, Steve. One thing I think you said, but I didn't quite make it out. You were looking to provide greater transparency by documenting in some fashion the activities of the program committee. Did you say that?
I think I implied it. I don't think I was very specific about what I meant by it. But what I basically wanted to do is put out like a one-page report going into more detail about the numbers of submissions and number of acceptances, what categories they were in, possibly where I can without violating privacy, talking about why things that weren't accepted. I will say, though, one of the nice things that happened this time is that we actually had to reject a few that were otherwise quite acceptable, but we just didn't have time for. And I mean, for those of you who got rejected for that reason, sorry, but from a program committee's point of view, it's nice to be in that situation. It means that the overall quality is higher. But that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. I'll probably go into a little detail about the conference calls we had and maybe who attended, that sort of thing.
I guess some of the information that I, as a community person, would like to know is how many calls were there, who showed up to the call, how long were the calls, how many submissions did you look at in each one of the iterations, because I understand you do a few iterations, maybe 2 or 3. How many times did it come down to you saying, okay, I'm going to accept these 3 presentations because I just want to, and it's my prerogative, the kind of stuff that I used to do way back when. I guess it's important too, I think, for feedback to the community, for those whose talk was not accepted, for us to all understand why, what we can do differently next time. And the last thing is when, there are 16, I think, members of the PC, right?
17.
17 members of the PC. That, in theory, should give us a great distribution of tentacles across a wide range of different parts of this community. So I think it would be very valuable to know, are these people actually going out and beating the bushes and coming back with interesting talks themselves? If they are, I'd love to see their names tagged with this talk brought to you by Ren Provo, or this talk brought to you by these 2 people, that kind of stuff. Because that says to us that these people really are busting their butts as volunteers to this community.
Okay.
A bunch of suggestions.
Yeah, no, most of those suggestions are good. The last one is going to be hard because I just don't have the data there, other than my faulty memory. So not much I can do there. I also want to mention, though, that I don't expect everybody on the PC to be out recruiting talks. I think different members of the PC have different strengths and areas. And one of the reasons for having a fairly large PC is so that we can take advantage of the strengths of each person because they're individuals. So some are good at reviewing, some are good at recruiting. Some are good at both, and those people are great. So we take advantage of people where we can. And, of course, we try to have a pretty broad diversity of areas of expertise. So every talk that comes in that's relevant can be reviewed by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Joel?
Joel Yeagley. I'm a member of the PC. I just wanted to make an observation that one of the reasons I got on the PC, had to do with my complaints about the quality of the program. And one of the things that I would observe, having now been on the PC, is that it's actually pretty hard to recruit talks for NANOG. There are many people in the audience who are not willing to share their experiences. In some cases that amounts to running your underwear up a flagpole, so I can understand that. But it's actually nice to be in a situation where we have talks that we can reject. Not because they're bad, but because our program is full. We were in a situation where it was, for a while, where it was very hard to get talks at all. And so filling the program was challenging, which has deep implications for the actual quality of the material that you see. Because, if you have 18 slots and you have 16 talks, you have a problem.
Ren?
I'm not quite that tall. Another observation, many people who receive a conditional approval do not submit the final set of slides until the very end. So if folks are receiving a conditional approval, if you could make the minor adjustments, it would help everybody, and especially Steve, with planning out the time to make sure that the agenda is as jam-packed as it can be. And I will say that one of the tutorials I tried to get almost a year ago is finally on the agenda here, and that was a matter of time, space, the speaker's ability to travel. It's not always desire that is holding back some of the presentations. A lot of it's timing. So please keep submitting. Even if you're not accepted right away, please keep submitting. Each time you do better. We've seen it in the last year or two.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Sure.
Hey, Ren, before you disappear, does it make any sense at all to use a forum like this to get ideas for what the community wants to hear about? To somehow poll the audience for topics that would be of interest to hear about?
Wouldn't NANOG Futures be a better forum?
How successful has that been to date?
I think we've seen a lot of things added to the agenda that were mentioned on NANOG Futures as having been missing from past agendas. Just an
The only reason why doing it here might not be the best idea is I don't have anybody taking notes. I'm not in a position to do it, but otherwise, I'd love to hear ideas.
That's only the people who are attending that could participate in this room, whereas the mailing list, those who couldn't attend this meeting could participate.
Yeah. And the mailing list is archived.
Oh, and survey.
Oh,
Fill
yes,
out your
there is
survey.
that. Thank you, Ted. Microphone.
Says it here, I'll write it down for you. Let's not throw away bright ideas.
I actually didn't hear what he said.
I said if somebody here has a bright idea, I'll write it down. Let's not discourage or throw away bright ideas.
Okay, Randy's volunteered to write bright ideas down. And it's being recorded, yes, thank you. Okay, so, bright ideas. Anybody? Come on up to the microphones, say something. Otherwise, I'll pass the mic over to, I think Rob is next.
You already have one of these up here. Well, maybe you'd like it back. Okay, now I'm confused. Okay, I think I can just hit play here. Okay, so apologies in advance to those of you who are in the back of the room because I've got a whole bunch of tiny text on this. I'll try to do you better next time. But if you want to go to the website indicated here, nanog39mlcupdate.pdf at my place, you can follow along on this, and I'll give people a couple of seconds to type that in if they want. This is a mailing list committee status update. I'm the chairman of the NANOG mailing list committee. We've got a few things we want to talk about. I'm going to give a status update on who is on the mailing list committee, recap our process flow, which we talked about last time, talk about what's been happening and what's not been happening. There's some things that we sort of wanted to happen that we haven't gotten around to dealing with. Some technical stuff, including a brief review on the Blogger incident that was causing bounces for certain posts to the mailing list. Pending AUP additions, which generally fall under the rubric of stuff that we wanted to be moving along but we didn't get around to doing. I have a new job, by the way, and that's part of my excuse for this. And then a question and answer session. So who all's on the MLC? That's Sue Joyner from Merit. She does a lot of the administrivia. None of these other people are here, by the way, except for me. I tried to sell NANOG in Toronto in February as well as I could. I said, hey, everybody, it'll be cool, and nobody seemed to be up for that. David Barak, Alex Pilosov, Brett Watson, and me. So what do? We do list administrivia. We do AUP enforcement, and when we, in our copious spare time, we also do new policy development. The list administrivia is pretty straightforward for anybody who's run a mailing list before. You all know about the kind of mail that you get. Hey, how do I remove myself from this list? Why can't I post to the list, etc. We handle that. People who send stuff to NANOG admin, and in some cases NANOG request, it ends up in our mailboxes, and then we go ahead and deal with it. We're here to help. AUP enforcement. The good news is you'll see in a couple of slides is there hasn't been a whole lot of need for that lately. Not exactly sure what's happened to the list because you guys are letting me down. No, seriously. We used to have a whole bunch of difficulties, and lately we have been having almost no difficulties. The difficulties that we do have tend to be people forgetting to use their real names. We ask them nicely, hey, can you please not post from wellfleetrouterboy@gmail.com or whatever email address you're using? And they say, oh, I'm sorry, man, I forgot to change that. And the next post you see from them has Joe Smedley on it or something. So it's all good. So here's some of that small text that I was apologizing for. If you this is nothing new to anyone who's gone to the website and looked at the AUP. There's 7 major points that fall under they're the outline for what should and shouldn't be on the mailing list. And those include discussion of focus on internet operational and technical issues. Please don't post off topic. Please don't cross post. Please be nice to each other. Please don't use this as your marketing platform. Please don't have social and political arguments here. And please be yourself. So here's some more of that really tiny print. So, I don't know, can anyone in the back room actually see that?
I can't see it.
Okay, so here's a typical scenario, is that a subscriber might send email to the list, and an MLC member, volunteer, or somebody in the community might bring it to our attention that this appears to be a violation of the AUP as posted on the website. steering committee is authorized to make changes to that AUP per NANOG's charter, by the way. So we come to either a consensus or a one-person opinion that it's a violation of the AUP. Some stuff is pretty obvious. You know, I don't really believe that somebody's last name is Wellfleet if they post to the list. So, you know, we ask them, hey, can you please leave your real name? So the way we usually try to handle it is to just ask people nicely. You know, don't yell at people because they're probably not aware that they're doing something wrong. Ask them nicely, point out the AUP, ask them to honor it. If they don't stop, the MLC will get together and try to come to a consensus and send an official warning to the user. Now, Randy has expressed concern in the past that the difference between being contacted cordially and asked to modify one's behavior and being actually warned is not necessarily clear to the people who are being warned, but I would say that that's probably just because Randy hasn't actually been warned about anything yet. We do try to make it clear when we say, you know, hey, we're, you know.
Or that was thrown off the list.
That was before. That wasn't us. And that came with no warning. So if things don't cool down, you know, we ask people nicely a few times. We warn them officially. Might end up bouncing someone off the list for 3 to 6 months. We haven't had to do that recently. In the most recent, probably 3 or 4 cycles of me coming up here and giving this talk. We can also permanently revoke people's posting privileges. I'm not sure that there's anybody who's in that situation right now. And here's some mail, some text that is both small and light, so it's going to be even tougher to read. But it's from me, and it's to somebody named Joe Fubar at gmail.com, which is probably not his real name. And it's CC to NANOG admin. It says, howdy, please take a moment to read the NANOG mailing list's AUP at URL with particular attention to item 7, which requires use of real names, not aliases, on the mailing list. We'd appreciate it if you'd honor our AUP by posting with your real name in future. Best regards. So that's the kind of mail that we send out, and it typically has really good results, as we've seen lately. Since the last meeting, there have been no warnings, no list removals, 3 requests to use your real name instead of a truncated or alias name. We've had a couple of threads that got really verbose, but for some strange reason, they actually seem to stay on topic, more or less. And nobody was complaining about them being off topic, which tends to validate our perception that they were staying on topic. So what hasn't been happening? Well, we had a new policy proposal that we talked about at the last meeting. There was a vacation message ban. There was documentation of existing policy, which was the removal process. There was also an emergency action policy. And due to time constraints and the fact that I did not delegate those out to somebody who has the time to get them into a more presentable form, they have not moved forward. What I hope to be able to do in the next few weeks is get them, A, delegated to somebody whose job is not making them crazy, B, up onto the wiki, and C, post that new development that they're actually on the wiki to the futures community and see if we can get some discussion going there and maybe arrive at some consensus. So here's some technical stuff. We have this run-in with a company called Blogger, which is now a Google property, which means that it is unfortunately affected by the Google cone of silence. And they'll fix stuff, but be darned if they're going to let you know what they actually fixed or that they fixed it or anything like that. So somebody was sending NANOG mailing list mail. They were subscribed to it. They were forwarding it into Blogger to have Blogger chew on it and present it in a form that they liked. And some posts to the list, by no means all, a very small minority, but it was repeatable and had to do with them being MIME encapsulated in a particular way. It was generating a bounce back to the original poster with no information like envelope to or anything like that. No headers in the bounce, just, hey, I'm Blogger, I'm not happy, I didn't like your message, bye. So it was literally that brief. There was no way that we could be expected to debug it based on that. So we came up with this cunning scheme, and we decided that we were going to take a two-pronged approach to this. Talked to Warren, and I talked to some other people who tried to chase this issue inside of Google. But the cone of silence actually covers parts inside Google too. So they don't even necessarily hear back when things are fixed properly. But the problem seems to have solved itself. We'll deal with that on the next slide. We also decided simultaneously that we wanted to move the nanog.org mailing list stuff onto dedicated servers. It currently lives on something called trapdoor.merit.edu, which is a list server, a machine that is dedicated to mailing list service on Merit's behalf. And we decided that so that we could have the latitude to run the list processing software that we wanted, perhaps a different MTA, operating system issues, other stuff like that. That the prudent thing to do, that we were thinking especially of having per recipient envelope from in mail so that bounces could come back in a way that would be trackable. We thought, it would be nice to have this on a machine of its own. So what finally happened on the Google end? We don't know. It seems to be fixed though. We have not had any complaints lately. How about that separate email server? Well, we talked to Merit staff before the holidays and didn't hear anything back, figured, well, it's the holidays. But in mid-January, there was a comment made about server donation having been offered and accepted, and that Merit staff would be installing it shortly. And gosh, that came as a surprise to us. So the situation was brought up in the most recent SC call, which unfortunately I couldn't attend due to a scheduling conflict. It seems to be more of a communication problem than an implementation problem. And my understanding is that all of us are going to get together here face to face and hammer that out. So, action items. This is obviously not including that, which is a separate issue and a much wider sphere of concern than just the mailing list committee. Posts on wikis, discussion on NANOG futures, and implementation if the community decides they like it and the SC decides to take it. So the warning and removal process documentation, which you've seen in that really fine print, was diagrammed up many moons ago by Bill Norton, and on a napkin. And the napkin was then scanned and faxed to somebody, and at which point it was photocopied and then scanned back in and turned into a PDF. And we need to reconcile that with the documentation that we have and what we understand to be the current process, and put it on the wiki and solicit community feedback. There's an emergency action clause, which I believe is the charter, not the AUP. This involves emergency removal of people due to things like mailer loops and stuff like that, technical stuff which is necessary to keep servers from blowing up and subject to immediate review as soon as people are available. Pardon?
I think
is your recollection that my recollection is incorrect?
My recollection is a motivation for the emergency action. It was more for the a threat or something that is
hostile action.
Hostile action, posting of salaries or something like that, as opposed to a technical. But
as long as they include the actual money for the salary, it's okay by me. Okay, so I think I stand corrected on that, because when you mentioned that, it sort of tickled my brain. So yeah, that again, we need to get that up onto the wiki and have a discussion about it, so that we aren't handicapped by me saying what I think I remember it said rather than what it actually says. Then there was the whole vacation policy. Now, we had a go-around on that where it didn't seem to be wide enough, and this is the widened text that includes anything that sends auto-replies. There were several people who were vocally in favor of it. There was not unanimous support for that, because some people have to send mail through Outlook or whatever and don't have the option of going with Gmail, or I don't understand why, but local policy is local policy. There wasn't clear consensus on this. We need to get clear consensus before we move it forward, or at least a majority that's in favor of doing a particular thing. On the bright side, it's not a problem that we've had lately, so it's not exactly the end of the world if it doesn't move forward. So, does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much.
I'm going to wind him up. Is everybody still awake? It's quiet out there. Just checking. You know, these community meetings, I'm not used to them being this quiet.
Martin's not here.
Ah.
And we didn't have alcohol planned.
Okay. I'll stop asking why it's quiet then. And I'll get my display going. There we go. You all know who I am by now, so we'll get past that slide. And I just wanted to, oops, sorry, Jason, again, give some acknowledgments. One of the themes that I always talk about at home when we talk about NANOG, and its constant theme here, is that this really is a collaborative effort, a community effort. And it couldn't, NANOG and the activity could not happen without the partnership of Merit and NANOG, the community. And that happens through the participation of the SE, the PC, and the LIS admins. Merit certainly has some representation in all of those communities, but we're in this evolution, as we've talked about earlier. Bill highlighted in his slides, from us doing everything to working with the community, and finding balance is always a challenge, and I truly appreciate the various committee members that you've all either elected or appointed to work with us at Merit. The Merit staff, again, who are just attendees as you, I wanted to draw attention to, because it speaks to that earlier message that Merit isn't here doing NANOG just because we see ourselves as a support activity, but truly as individuals gaining something from the experience to take home to our membership as well. Don Welsh, Mary, Rob are all members of our senior leadership team at Merit. We have a new individual, Robert, who's joining our regional networking activities. Bert Rossi, I'm sure many of you know him as on the program committee, and Manish Kerr from our R&D area. So again, a number of people at Merit just here as attendees. There's some folks back in Ann Arbor that's probably watching us, but certainly looking out for our broadcast and our servers back at home that we count on, and I wanted to make sure that I recognize their efforts. Sue, Lori, Brian. Brian is a new member, maintaining our website and doing some graphics for us, so he's learning about NANOG as well. Hey Brian, put that up. Oh, no, wait, change it. It's not quite the right way. So he's been really great in accommodating to all of us. The Merit staff on site, Carol and Dawn, fantastic job with registration and keeping track of all the numbers and the name badges and the hotel information on site for all of you. We couldn't do it without them. Valerie's doing a great job in supporting the program committee and linking all the presentations and doing the website support so the program committee can do their job. David, Sal, and Larry, networking engineers working with the hosts, dealing with supporting Tony and our wireless environment, and Jason does a great job in making sure that we're able to broadcast the meeting remotely. I'd like to, at this moment, to take a second and make a special introduction. Andy, if you'd stand up. Andy Rosenzweig is a manager at Merit, and he will be joining us going forward. He's here at this meeting, sort of learning about the community. Andy's role going forward, so all of you can get to know him, is to give me a little bit of relief as well. Putting these meetings together and providing the interface with the community takes a lot of effort. It's just a really big job. And so as part of Merit's commitment to make sure these meetings are successful, Andy is going to be joining us going forward so that he can help plan some of the meeting logistics. Some of what Joe indicated that he had a conversation with Don Welsh about is the idea of taking the experience from hosting these meetings, putting these more professional networking operators forums together back home at Merit. Andy will be able to bring that knowledge and exchange back home to Michigan through his involvement. So welcome, Andy. Please make sure everybody stops by, gets to know him. You'll get to see a lot of him. Again, thanks again to our hosts. Couldn't do it without them. It's been fun. We're not done yet, but it's been a real grid. Our contributors didn't put a bunch of logos up here. I won't read all of the elements. You can see them on the website, but you can see that there are a lot of folks that really aren't hosts, but they're contributors. They're either donating hardware, donating time, donating an effort to make this meeting happen, and it's all about partnership. Our break sponsors, these folks are important because they're actually contributing real dollars. And it's really important not only that we recognize them, but that we appreciate their financial contribution. Beer and Gear sponsors, we step up the contribution level a little bit more. Again, it's really important in the dynamics and the mix that we find ways that it is a return on investment for all of these sponsors to be here to make these meetings happen. So while we don't see this meeting as a marketing opportunity for them, it really is important that as vendors hosting and sponsoring these meetings, they see it as a return on investment if we want to keep those registration dollars in check. And you'll see why that counts in just a second. Thought I would, I'll run through these really briefly. At the end, feel free to ask me some questions because we're running a little bit late and I know all of you want to get out of here. As we talked earlier, there's a Merit reorganization that's now complete, and there's also a new website at Merit that will help everyone learn a little bit more about Merit and see the product line that we have to offer. Direct support for NANOG itself, we have some new switchgear. One of our hardware vendors has donated some switchgear to NANOG, to Merit, to support these meetings, badly needed. It's really appreciated. That same vendor is donating a router to us. That's really important because sometimes we find a host that's not a gear provider and we need to provide our own router. And it's nice in our stack of hardware if we have a brand new router to be able to use. So that was really important and greatly appreciated. As Rob indicated, there's some dialogue that's been taking place since since November, and will continue on a little bit in February in terms of the specifications of a new server. The idea was early on that a member from the community stepped forward and said, hey guys, I can buy the list admin team a server, no problem. It's a donation. And then we took it a little bit further and we said, well, geez, instead of just running a mail list application on the server, could we get some other things out of the gift? and we need to have some dialogue, which we'll be doing here shortly, and there's still a commitment to donate hardware to that cause. And Joe Provo from the steering committee is going to be working with others at Merit, and certainly with Joe Abley as we talk about the wiki and the NANOG website. How can we create this exchange between the community forum discussion growing out of the wiki and the Merit-managed NANOG website? Okay, so it's another one of those evolution issues. We have the NANOG website that we all know, and it does certain things, and we all know that we have a wiki, and we have a community forum that's growing and evolving, and how do we make that something new? And so I'm looking forward to those set of discussions, and probably in June we'll have something more to report. And I suspect that Joe and Joe will be having lots of discussions with all of you in NANOG Futures and other forums about that. And I as well, and probably our Merit webmaster back at home saying, well, this is possible, but that's not possible, and it's just all part of the dialogue. Having said all of that, I think it's really important to stress the importance of the survey form. We talk about it, you'll hear about it throughout the meeting, but it's the only way in which Merit can really validate, and the NANOG SC, and PC can validate what you think. You know, it's the forum for you to tell us all, collectively all, was the venue good? Did you like it in Toronto? Was the program great? Bad? And just to hear from you. So it was surprising to me when we did the survey analysis from St. Louis that we got like 63 or 67 responses out of an attendee population of over 400. It was also surprising to me, I'm going to lecture you guys a little bit, so bear with me. It was also surprising to me that when we did elections in October, that there were over 2,000 people in the community eligible to vote, meaning you could speak your mind about who should be on the steering committee, and just a little over 200 voted. So Merit, end of my lecture, and we'll go on. Merit has invested a lot in all of you to give you the opportunity to have your voice, to have this become a partnership between the community and Merit, and you need to exercise it, not just count on the program committee by themselves to do the job. End of lecture. Sorry. And on to the last page, which is something that we're all concerned about. Giving the transparency is the issue of where do we stand on the budget. You'll see these numbers from our previous meeting being released on the website, and these will be posted probably tomorrow morning as well, so that you'll be able to track it and see. These are audited numbers from Merit's financials. Individuals who've looked over our accounting firms that look at these numbers. The first number I wanted to share with you, because you can see the $212,000 is what you can consider money in the bank. That's what Merit has in the bank to put reservations in for future contracts. We need to be able to have a reserve to schedule hotel venues for you if we want to get predictability to scheduling these meetings. So there has to be a reserve. There just has to be a reserve, and that's what it is today. Then what we do is we break out the expenses on a quarterly basis, the fixed cost and the cost for the meeting. And we try to show you those numbers in this format. The revenue is the revenue. It's a combination of what we get from sponsors and registration fees, and that's for the October meeting. The expenses, I've tried to break them out in two categories. The salary, what you all, through your involvement in the community, contribute to salary dollars. Salary are both the consultants that we hire, temporary or whatever, to do the meeting, as well as full-time staff. The non-salary expenses, I've tried to list below so that you can get a sense of how the non-salary dollars are broken out in terms of what it really costs to do an NANOG meeting. Equipment is equipment. As you can see, we didn't spend a lot of money in putting together the October meeting. We had what we needed, but it cost a little bit more for supplies, paper, just supplies, mailing, all those kinds of things. We try to be very efficient in terms of the merit staff travel dollars. The same number of staff that are here are the same number of staff that went to St. Louis. So you can see in your own travel expense budget how those numbers compare. We didn't have any, non-merit staff travel that we compensated, or speakers. And you can see what we paid the hotel in St. Louis to host the contract, or to host the meeting. The last item, G&A and systems overhead, and that's the cost that every project at Merit has to reimburse to the central administration, the cost of our rent, the cost of our insurance, all of those kinds of fixed costs that every organization, and clearly nonprofits, have. So that's Merit's fixed cost. And then you take the revenue, all of the expenses, and you get to a per meeting balance. So the challenge for all of us, this number is much better than it was in our last 2 meetings, and I suspect that Toronto will be truly a great meeting, and we won't see these red numbers going forward. But that's the balance of making sure that this is a cost recovery endeavor for all of us, including Merit. So, there we go. Any questions? We're 15 minutes over, Joe, but thanks.
Hello. Is it still on? Yes. Okay. There really isn't anything else scheduled with slides to talk about or anything like that, but if there are, everyone's very quiet, so I'm guessing this is going to be a big silent pause after I finish. But if anybody has thoughts or comments about how NANOG is hosted, or the registration process, or getting an account so that you can register, or available t-shirt sizes, or anything, feel very free to walk up to the microphone. If you don't want to walk up to the microphone right now, then one thing we perhaps didn't emphasize enough was we have a mailing list called NANOG Futures, which has a relatively small membership, certainly compared to the main list. But I would imagine that if you care enough about how NANOG works to show up to the community meeting, then it would be a good place to subscribe. Anything that would normally be off topic for the main list, because it's about non-technical issues to do with how NANOG works, is most definitely on topic for the NANOG Futures list. Mike?
Yeah, I'm running a bit slow today, so this is about mailing list admin, just catching up. And actually, one of the things that Rob was saying about not needing that much in terms of heavy moderation or anything, I wonder if that is actually proof that the approach that they're taking is working, rather than something being wrong or people not being as crazy as they used to be or something. I think it's just a good thing rather than a bad thing. That no news is good news. But that's just an observation, I think, and I think there's a lot of just down to the hard work that those guys have put in, and the approach that they've taken when dealing with issues.
I think that may well be true. It's also quite possible that it's just kind of a fluke. A lot of the times where we had big problems on the list with threads running out of control, it's quite often only a very small number of people that are responsible for most of the noise. So all it really takes is for one person to suddenly get a bee in their bonnet, and suddenly the process is very important. So
I think maybe I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, just to respond to Mike, I think maybe also people are more fully employed now. The economy's kicking back up.
Joel Yeagley again. I would just observe that when things are running well, you probably don't get a lot of feedback because, well, people don't care. They sharpen their pitchforks in a real big hurry when they get unhappy, though, right? So it's really obvious when you've screwed something up or when things are going badly. It's not so obvious when they're actually working smoothly, right? You're sitting in your knock and you say, I don't get it, there are no alarms.
fair enough, yeah. Anybody else have any comments about anything? Or even comments or questions about the format of the meeting? There's lots of people here who are new to NANOG. First meeting time here. Okay, cool. Well, the meeting tomorrow starts at 9 a.m. If you want to stake out a really cool spot with the optimum Wi-Fi performance, you want to get here a bit earlier than that. Or use A, right? Yeah, we have BG on one SSID, and we have NANOG A, if you've seen it, which is 802.11a. Actually, one other point that I'll mention just briefly because no one else has. There is internet access up in the lobby. And at the moment, I believe, last time I checked, the SSID for the NANOG and NANOG A networks was being advertised, but I think probably that's going to be stopped. So if you do go up to the lobby and you don't see NANOG or NANOG A in the list of drop-down available networks, you should probably just specify it manually. And it should just work magically. And the idea is to avoid confusing the other hotel guests, civilians, who might otherwise be confused by the NANOG splash page. Anybody else for the microphone? Okay. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.